Hello and welcome to this very special Drowned Earth question and answer session. You will notice that we haven't done a live chat for quite some time. It became clear a little while ago that YouTube have actually removed the Hangouts on Air feature, which is pretty old, but also very easy and very efficient, and we haven't quite got ourselves organized to find a replacement for it. But this isn't quite one of those, because of course it isn't going up live, but it occurred to me a lot's been going on recently, and so Sean and I were having a chat and decided, why don't we do a Q&A session, take some questions from the community, and Sean will pose them to me and I'll answer some of them, maybe not all. I mean, in time-honored tradition, I'm drinking truth serum. So we'll see how that goes. But hello, Sean, and thank you for coming.
Whoa, I should have gotten some serum of myself, and you'll notice I'm inside. You can see my face.
Yeah, that all helps.
Starting to learn technology.
Well,
apologies to all of you for that last one.
Cool. Well, so I think generally we'll just get right into it. First of all, I thought we'd talk about, we're just coming to the end of Planters season. So for those of you who don't know, Planters season is an in-world festival in the Drowned Earth, which we have been celebrating ourselves. And we've been doing various things to celebrate, and not least of which a number of the wayfarers, including Sean, and actually I've been doing a few myself. We've run a number of demo events and tournaments and things like that. So, Sean, what's been going on?
Yeah, it's been a fun little month with people all over the place. We just wanted to kind of resurge a little bit more interest in the game. So we decided, well, we've got this in-world festival that happens about this time. This seems like a perfect way to get out of summer and into the winter season. We created a scenario. There may be some more coming, just localized around the festival events. People have been out there doing stuff. Peter Shepard, he had an event over at London Dark Sphere earlier in the month. You and Ram did something at Geek and Buy, right?
That's right. Yeah, out in Harlow in Essex, which is just sort of northeast of London. We went. It's just a small show, but very friendly, very local. And we went and gave a bunch of demos, and I took some stock and got some people involved in the game, and it was great fun.
Yeah, I was able to. I'm very busy with my theater work in the summertime, but I was able to get a weekend away down to Madison, Wisconsin, here in the States. Had a very cool little event. We had about five or six of us playing the game and playing the hazardous planting scenario. So we had two tables of three people playing for that, and had about maybe 4 or 5 demo games going throughout the whole thing as well. So kind of bouncing between monitoring people in the demo game, which is great to be able to, like, here's how you work, guys. I'm going to let you play. Let me know when you have questions, and kind of bounce in and out. So it was cool. It was cool. Hopefully we've got that store, the Noble Knight Games in Madison, interested in picking it up. So that would be great for a little more US presence.
I've been speaking to them. In fact, I sent them an email today, just chasing them up, because they made an inquiry and said that they were potentially interested in stocking the game, which of course would be great.
So yeah, if you're in the Midwest area, contact them. Let them know, I like this game. I would love to buy it from you. And that'll help move things along. You did something with Tom at ChillCon Derby as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. Derby. It's an English place name. You obviously don't pronounce it anything like it's spelled.
No.
But there's 2 ChillCons a year. There's one up in Sheffield and one in Derby. And so that was also great fun. It's a busy show. Derby is in the East Midlands of the Midlands of UK, not Midlands of England. People don't realise how enormous Scotland is. The Scottish border is almost halfway between the tip of Scotland and the south of England. But of course, it's much more sparsely populated up there. Yeah, I mean, complete and total digression there, but yeah, Derby's in the Midlands. Sheffield is just in the north, in the south of the north, so to speak. But it's a great show. I would definitely recommend people based in the north or in the Midlands head along to that one. There's a lot of different traders and a few little tournaments going on, and demo games and participation games. Lots of traders. It's good. It's got a good atmosphere.
Oh, very cool. Oh, that sounds fun. And there's stuff come up. We've got 1 weekend left here.
That's right.
Within the umbrella of the Planters Season Holiday Festival. And Simon, one of our Wayfarer-in-Chiefs, is running the Tech Rush competition this Saturday at 9 a.m. in the Tabletop Weekend over at Element Games in Stockport. So if you're able to, he's got room left. Fill out those tables, make them work for it. Go have some fun. The Tech Rush is a really cool narrative event. I ran it at Adepticon last year, had a great time, would love to get more people to run it. Very cool story. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of the choices that you make in that story.
Oh yeah, well, so it was the first of our official tournament packs, and the next one will continue the story. So
Cool.
I'm totally in the doghouse because at the last top table event, I went up and ran an event for the guys. I didn't run Tech Rush. I ran the slow grow event. But this time, Saturday is the day before a fairly significant birthday. So I am absolutely not going to be in Manchester. I'm going to be down in London with friends and family. But I'm hugely grateful to Simon for picking up the slack and taking that on my behalf.
So that'll be fun. That'll go well. Stop by the top table weekend this weekend. Have some fun. Play some hazardous planting games and get those games reported. See if you can win a special card for your faction.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I think that just about ties up the Planters Month news. We will be running the same Planters Month next year. We're going to continue the tradition where we'll elaborate a little bit more on the Planters Month story. We'll have some more organized play events. We will have another official scenario. And we'll do a similar thing, I think, where we allow people to, as with the Planters hazardous planting scenario that you wrote, actually, Sean. We allow people to submit their results, and then whoever gets the best results gets a unique effect card for their faction, which is pretty spiffy. And we've also run a number of promotions on the website, a few flash sales and discounts and that sort of stuff. So more of that next year. And the last thing to say about Planters Month, we also ran a fiction competition. And I am going to announce the winner right now. The winner is Ronald Robinson. He wrote a very cool short story, which I will be publishing on the website over this weekend. So well done to him, and I'll be in touch with you about your prize.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, well, you haven't read it yet, but I'll send it to you after we've done this.
Check it
out. Excellent. So what's next? Are we on to the Q&A, I think?
Yeah. Planter season. Should we, before quite leaving Planter season, update everyone with 1 weekend left where the standings are for hazardous planting?
Oh, if you want to, yeah, because I actually don't know this myself. You've been in charge.
Well, I've looked in it's Tuesday, right? Tuesday morning, last I checked, the Artifactors have a very narrow lead on this. So
okay. Who's in second?
Second place, right behind them, I believe, are the firm, actually.
Interesting.
The other guys are coming neck and neck. I can do a quick peek at it all as we're talking. Do we want to tease anything about what that special effect card might be to get people fighting over the weekend?
No, I'm going to say nothing. I'm going to say nothing. All I'll say is it'll be worth the fight.
Yes, it definitely will. All right, looking at this again, we've got our artifactors in the lead. Firm is right behind. Militia and Wayfarers are also on the board. Nothing from the Bondsman at the moment.
Okay, okay, that's interesting because
Yeah,
the bondsman and the at the last winter campaign, the bondsman and the militia absolutely steamed ahead of the rest of the crowd. I think in the end, the other three factions caught up a little bit, and the last round was fairly close. Their lead narrowed, but in the first couple of games, they absolutely shot ahead.
yeah. Firm and the Wayfarers are tied in second place, and they're only 3 points behind the Artifactors.
Interesting. Okay, everything to fight
got
for then.
till, got till next Tuesday, everybody. If you've played games and you just haven't reported them, go ahead and find a link, report your games, get them in. We will stop the voting on Tuesday the 15th and then announce the winning faction soon after.
Good stuff. So I should really explain the reason why I'm not willing to tease anything is because the prize is definitely going to be tailored to the faction. So I'm going to do something specific that suits the faction that wins. And so I haven't written 5 of these things. I've got some ideas, but I'm not going to say anything at the moment because I want it to be a really kind of a suitable prize, if you know what I mean.
There we go. So if you don't want the Artifactors to continue to be dodging around, get playing.
Good stuff. Okay, hit me with some questions.
All right, all right, all right. Let's see. Where do we want to go here first? Well, since we're still segueing from the planter season, let's ask this one question. Someone was interested about those wise merchant characters created in the planter season, and if we might see them in the future to be able to play with them.
So who asked this question?
I don't know.
You don't know. I see.
A personal friend of myself.
Was it you?
I am a friend of myself. Yeah, I asked this question.
Yeah, so you've been on this from day one, and the so just to explain to anybody who hasn't read the planter season fluff, planter season is kind of like a harvest festival, but the sort of opposite of a harvest festival. It's after the monsoons, all of the paddy fields, all of the agricultural land has been bombarded by storms by the monsoon. So have villages, people's houses, and it's the time to build and to just at the end of the rains is the time that you plant rice. It's the time that you plant any of those kind of monsoon crops. And rebuild the earthworks, the paddy fields, the terraces on the hillsides that you use for agriculture, and just generally repair and rebuild. And of course, what happens in Ulaya when you start to dig? Obviously, you find things under the ground because the whole world is based on this. Once upon a time, there was this huge global civilization full of technology, and so there's lots of stuff down there. As soon as you push your plow through a field, there's a good chance you might find something. And so it's a time to celebrate having done all of that work, to look at all of the cool stuff that you might have found, and it's a time to start to look to the future and think about the future of the world, the future of your family, the future of your community. And one of the ways that you celebrate this, there are these legendary figures, the wise merchants, who are reported to wander from settlement to settlement and help out with building and research and all kinds of different things. Sean, you really like the idea of these guys being miniatures. And actually playing an active role in the game. So how am I going to answer your question? Well, firstly, I like the idea. Secondly, they are fictional characters. I mean, I know everyone in the Drowner is a fictional character, right? It's a fictional world. But even within the Drowner, these are fictional characters. So rather like, Santa Claus, you might have people who dress up, and I think there's also very much a kind of theatre tradition as well with these guys, where there are wandering troops of entertainers who dress up as the wise merchants and go as the wise merchants themselves were reported to do, wander from settlement to settlement and, throw out, gifts and treats and all of this sort of stuff. So I think if we ever saw models, they might be people who are masquerading as the wise merchants rather than the actual wise merchants themselves, as they are sort of legendary characters.
Yeah. It would be neat to see, though. I have a few people in the gaming groups that I work with that said to me, like, those look cool. The pictures from the posters, which is really cool art, the sound of them. So they would love to be able
What
to.
if they were characters we all know and love, dressed up as the characters of, well, their childhoods, really?
Oh, cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that'd be fun. All right. So we've got a little tease on that. Have a question from Will Van Doom here. Looking at the future, is there any plans for more factions or new leaders for the factions that we already have?
Okay, well, this is a multi-part question, so I will unpack it. So let's talk about new leaders. That is absolutely and definitely going to happen. New leaders with new leader abilities and new leader cards. So what we are aiming to do, and we're playtesting it now, they won't be for general release for quite some time, I have to say. Don't get too excited, because this isn't an immediate thing. This is going to be part of a bigger release, which really starts to double down on the idea of the factions having very, very specific tactics and play styles that you can take advantage of. And one of the ways that you can do that is by selecting one leader over another, or a particular leader with several, there are obviously going to be several different leader card options. Each faction at the moment has about two. But there'll be at least another two, and the leader card and leader that you choose, the combination of those two things, will dictate the way the rest of your list is going to be built. So not soon, but absolutely yes.
Cool. That'll be fun.
So new factions, that is a bigger question. Now, I think when I first started, or sort of after Kickstarter, I got asked that question a lot, how many new factions? And in a game with a limited range of models, you've got two choices. You can either go broad and have lots and lots of factions, or you can go deep and develop the factions you've got quite a long way and give them lots of list building opportunities. And I've definitely made the choice that deep is the better of those two options. I think commercially, releasing new factions is probably the better thing to do, because everybody wants new factions. But I'm thinking about the game's health long term. I think the better thing to do is to expand on the factions that we've got, and not try to do too much too soon. Having said that, one of the other problems that we've got is that you'll notice, I think it's fair to say that anybody who plays Wayfarers will be wondering why that their faction's been a little bit neglected when it comes to the new releases. And the reason for that is, there are two reasons, and one of them I think is pretty obvious. The one that isn't so obvious is just from a playtesting point of view. When you have to when you release a new model for one of the four starting factions, you then need to test that model with all of the different options that faction has access to. When you release a Wayfarer, you then have to test it with not just the Wayfarers, but all of the other four factions, so 5 factions. So, we're getting close to 45 models or something like that now. Mm-hmm. And so it's a bigger task. But it isn't just that. One of the other things that I have been conscious of is the more faction neutral models you release, the more mercenaries, be that dinosaurs or Wayfarers, the more of those you release, the more you water down the unique character of each individual faction, because then it isn't what's the right way of putting it? It isn't. You can basically make the same list over and over again. You know, and it doesn't matter which faction you've got. You're going to take 2 Utahraptors and this Wayfarer and these generic models and what have you, and it just sort of waters everything down a little bit. So that is a slight problem, but I feel a total responsibility to anybody who has started the Wayfarers as a faction. And so what we're thinking about is there are a couple of things. And when I say we, I usually mean me, but in this case, it is we. It's the beta testing group, including you, Sean. There's obviously the idea of sub-factions, but there's also an idea I had about allied factions. So perhaps we might release a faction which is, to all intents and purposes, completely interchangeable with Wayfarers. It's a separate faction. It has a separate faction leader. It has a very specific, unique character, which is different to the other factions. But whereas most factions can only take one Wayfarer per amount of points, and so the higher you go, you can take more Wayfarers, but there is a limit to that.
Right.
With an allied faction, a faction that's allied to the Wayfarers, we could then release a whole bunch of models which are completely interchangeable with the Wayfarers. They wouldn't suffer from the same restrictions that Wayfarers normally suffer from. So, for example, if you take Greys with a regular faction, she's not going to be able to use her class ability with that faction because she isn't technically the same faction.
Right.
This new faction would be able to have unlimited access to Wayfarers. Wayfarers would have unlimited access to models from that faction, and they wouldn't suffer from the same restrictions of being different factions when it comes to things like commanding or the use of class rules, skills.
That could be fun, yeah. And that really kind of goes to like the depth. There's the 5. You still have your 5 main factions or buckets, but there's a little bit more granularity that could happen inside of those 5.
Exactly. And I think probably what's going to happen is, whereas the Wayfarers will so far have been quite neglected, they're about to have way more options than everyone else. And when I say about to, I mean not. This is still a little while off. It's, you know, first quarter of next year is what we're looking at, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. That could be cool. Let's see. Where's a good one? Well, maybe we'll just go down the line. It makes it easier here. So the next one from Matthew Bryce, he is wondering when you're going to come to Australia. He says he owes you a drink.
Well, I mean, there's no better reason to go to Australia, actually. So my other half is Australian, and I've never met any of her. Well, I've met one of her brothers, but I've never actually, because he came here. I came to Germany. We went to see him there. But I've never met her family, and that's obviously got to happen at some stage. And her mum lives in the Hunter Valley, which is about an hour north of Sydney. So I will obviously be dropping, I know where Matthew is. So I will obviously be dropping by to redeem that beer token.
There we go. And then Matthew, you can take your bondsman and smash his face. It's a good game.
I am obviously lousy at the game because I'm always thinking about rules interactions and not actually trying to win.
Right. Well, speaking of the bondsman, we've gotten a few questions from people. They are very excited about a mounted leader. So what would be the mounted leader for the bondsman, and what's he going to be riding?
Okay, well, I am not going to tell you. But I am going to say that there definitely will be a mounted bondsman leader, and it definitely will come out next year, probably in the later part of the year rather than the earlier part of the year. But that's definitely a thing which is coming. I don't think bondsman players need much help, to be perfectly honest with you. I think they're doing kind of okay as far as the their sort of faction power is concerned. But I think they deserve one, and so they're going to get one.
Ursula is an annoying little diverg.
You know, the funny thing is that opinion is very divided about her. I hear a lot of people saying, never take her, she's completely pointless. I'm like, you're doing it wrong.
Oh man, I've had a few games with friend of mine over here in Chicago, Greg Heath, where he'll just come in, shoot shoot my host with Ursula, and like, all right, you're gonna take it in the face, but are you gonna spend that action point to do something, or are you
Yeah,
just gonna let me take it?
yeah.
And that's annoying.
And I
All
think
right.
she like a lot of characters. She's more niche. Many of the characters are very universally useful, whereas some of them, particularly, I mean, I think the new releases are less universally useful and better in one area in particular. But Gersla is one of those that just starts off. She's not going to be useful in every game. She's not useful against every faction necessarily, or maybe every faction, but not against every list. Some lists you think you see, they've got a lot of little dinos, and you're like, yeah, that's got Gersla written all over it.
Well, kind of speaking about soldier types and troops, um, Greg Heath also had asked that originally there seemed to be some generic soldiers or troops for the factions that you were discussing.
Yeah.
Did that idea get scrapped, or did it just get put on the back burner?
So I think Greg's been involved in Drowned Earth since the beginning, because not a lot of people remember those days. But yeah, it was definitely something that I had as part of the core design to begin with, that I dropped. The idea is definitely not dead in the water, and we might see. In the first quarter of next year, you'll hear me say the first quarter of next year quite a lot. I might explain why at some stage, but in the first quarter of next year, we might see a product. Not 100%, but we might see a product with several different purposes that involves models that don't have names that can be used in that kind of troop function. Basically, one of the things that I want to avoid, and I think I've said this before on video, but we've all seen the games that start off as skirmish games, and they start to, the people making them start to make money, and they like selling miniatures because that literally is how you survive as a company. And so all of a sudden, you need squads of 5, and then you need 2 squads of 5, and then it's not a skirmish game anymore. There are like 22, 23 models on the table. I do not want the Drowned Earth to become one of those. I feel like it's fighting against the core design sensibility that I had when I wrote the game in the first place. So we're not going to have squads of troops, definitely not. But what we might have is some more inexpensive, non-unique troops that you can take multiples of, in the same way that you could take multiples of dinos.
Cool. And that could open it up so that you can take more of the high cost models that you want.
Yeah, that's something. Again, I don't want to just reduce the points cost in order that people end up with 22 models on the table. We've actually in playtesting been using 150 points much more recently, and it seems more natural. And that's still very often, once we've got some big expensive models on the table, that's still very often only 8-9 models. But it still works really well, and I'm contemplating the next organized play pack of stretching up to that points value, because it still isn't an enormous model requirement, and that's basically what I want to avoid. The more models you put on the table, the longer the game lasts, and I think that's okay, because with 5 versus 5, a game can last 35 minutes if you're one of you plays really badly, or one of you rolls dice like Thomas Macklin. But usually those games last about an hour, and if you go up to 150 points, so that's 50% more, then those games are more likely to last about 2 hours, which I think is probably the sweet spot for most miniatures gamers. Once you've unrolled your mat and you've got the scenery together and you've done all of that kind of stuff, you probably don't want to just be playing for 30 minutes. Although from my perspective, I actually like playing 3 30-minute games in an evening just as much as one really big meaty one.
Yeah, I'm leaning that way myself too. Some of the newer games that are come out are piquing my interest for that, to be able to play a couple in an evening, because then I feel like I can mitigate my mistakes and wipe the sour taste out of my mouth if it was a bad loss.
Yeah, yeah.
So moving on to the future, since you kind of teased a little first quarter stuff, a few questions that kind of lead to there. Craig Simpson was curious about any plans for an expansion. And both Greg and Ollie Gibson were curious about if there will be solo or co-op play.
Okay, well, I mean, those are very, very pertinent and interesting questions. And I guess it's probably not the first time I've mentioned co-op or solo play. It's an idea which was actually, again, part of the core design to begin with, and I realized it was just going to require way too much playtesting to be able to do it as part of the initial Kickstarter. So it's something I kicked off into the long grass, but certainly never forgot about. And we are definitely going to be releasing not just solo and co-op rules, but actually a solo and co-op campaign in as a boxed product. And basically, we're going back to Kickstarter, and we're going to run a big solo stroke co-op AI Kickstarter campaign with possibly as a stretch goal a new faction, which will involve some of the models that are already involved in this campaign. So as I say, I've been thinking about it for a long time, and it's basically, I get asked a lot, can you play as the dinos? And
Right.
the answer is, at the moment, you can include them in your crew, but you can't at the moment take them as a faction in their own right, because it doesn't make sense, considering most of the scenarios are about achieving objectives like manipulating control panels, digging up treasure, that kind of thing that dinosaurs just aren't interested in. But they make great protagonists for your heroes. And so what we're going to do, what the April Kickstarter is about, and April's a loose date, maybe it's April, but I'm aiming for April anyway. What we are aiming to do is have a fully cooperative or solo mode of campaign play with a series of interconnected narrative games with actually a little bit of mini game in between, which involve unnamed heroes. And that's what I was saying earlier on about the potential to also use those in the competitive game as unnamed troops. So we'll have unnamed heroes, which you will be able to build the way you want them. There'll be restrictions, of course, but there'll be a kind of character building process. They will level up during the campaign. The campaign will tell a story. You will be unraveling this mystery. You'll have a number of different choices. Between each game, you will also have some choices. How you did in the game will affect what choices you're allowed to make, and those choices will affect what the situation that you start off in, or things that happen during the next part of the campaign, the next game in the campaign. And at the end of it, you will have resolved this hopefully very interesting story set in a particular part of Ulaya. We're still on Ulaya, but a part that hasn't been mentioned all that much, which I think people are going to find really interesting and exciting. And thematically, the potential new faction, which isn't a guarantee, it's a possible stretch goal, that will be themed to this particular part of the world.
There is a lot of info in that
I've been bursting at the
conversation there to
seams
unpack. I know it posed even more questions, because a lot of that was new info to me too. But I don't want to I don't want to derail from these questions.
There was one other thing that I wanted to mention about it, and I'm trying to think about what it was. Okay, big one. Again, this is not a guarantee. This is a potential stretch goal material, because I know it's complicated. Well, I don't think it'll be complicated when it's finished. It won't be complicated to play, but it'll be very involved to develop. In an ideal world, what I would really love to do is make sure that the AI system that we're working on now, with minimal changes, is able to be adapted to be used in the competitive mode of play as well, so that you can fight a game against your opponent with independent dinos in the middle that you're fighting around and against, and they are reacting to what you're doing. They're fighting you. And there are also opportunities for you to try and weaponize them against each other.
That could be very cool. And that could even be turned into a very easy solo play on your own, in terms of, I'm going to play this scenario, and I've got nature and the dinos trying to thwart me.
Well, what I'd love to see actually is with the campaign system. Obviously, the Kickstarter is going to be a multi-game campaign with very specific setup, very specific story going on there, and I've got quite an interesting way, I think, of determining what happens during these games. That's very narrative and is very interactive for the players. But I really also like the idea of people designing independently of the campaign, not connected to anything else, but people just using the AI system to design their own scenarios. That would be great. And if a lot of people in the community got together and started sharing and exchanging scenario ideas and building standalone scenarios for the AI system, that would be really exciting for me. And I would definitely pitch in and help play test and make sure that they were balanced well and that sort of thing.
That'd be great. Yeah, that was a little bit of some of the ideas we were taking into planter season too, where hazardous planting came out of from that. I'd love to have more people sharing scenarios.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, everyone. Keep an eye out. Keep pressing. Keep looking for all this great stuff for the Kickstarter in the spring. Let's see. Where can we go to next? Well, it kind of leads into Craig Simpson had another question about the release schedule, about what can we expect in terms of new models per year, and when will there be, how often will new things be coming down the pike?
So when I delivered the Kickstarter, obviously the sensible thing to do is go on loads of podcasts and social media and talk to a lot of people. And this was a question that I got asked a lot, and I was always really cagey about answering it. And I'm really glad that I was really cagey about answering it, because I know now definitely that my instinct that I probably shouldn't make promises I couldn't keep was absolutely accurate. And one of the things, just not to downplay anything about, what we've done, but, when you're an independent miniature producer and also a new business, it's very difficult to predict where you will be in terms of workload, in terms of finances, in terms of all of the different things that you need to have completely lined up well in order to have a regular release schedule, as more established companies do. And I am how to explain it. I guess this is getting a little bit into the business side of things, which I prefer not to do, but it's also not a big secret, so I don't really mind doing it either. The traditional distribution model is something that I was going after, where I thought, okay, so we've done Kickstarter, and now you try and get the game into the shops, and the way that you do that is you go through a distributor. So it's what's called a two-step distribution model. Manufacturer sells to distributor, distributor sells to shops, and then the shop sells to you, the end user, sort of thing. And the accepted wisdom is that that's the best way to make a new game grow. The problem is, and again, I try not to talk about other companies when I've got the official hat on, because I think it's just unprofessional and a bit rude, particularly in a negative light. But this isn't negative. Games Workshop, while I was developing the game, and while I was after the Kickstarter was over, the campaign, but I was preparing to deliver, Games Workshop was the sleeping giant, and somewhere between me finishing my Kickstarter and delivering it, they decided to wake up and actually start knocking stuff out of the park.
Yeah, you did.
And, you know, I am completely in total admiration that finally that company, one way or the other, managed to see sense and managed to start making good things again, and started to treat the customer, you know, take a kind of customer first attitude and that sort of thing. So hats off to them. But it's not great for you if you're an independent miniature producer. And one of the things that I discovered was that traditional distribution model was very hard to crack in a business environment where most distributors did not want to be taking any risks. So particularly the distributors that were based around independent miniatures games, which is most of them, because Games Workshop really have their own distribution model. They don't need to use third-party distributors. They sell direct to stores only. And so all of the people who survive selling the selling independent miniatures games are not at the moment as willing as I would like them to be to take on something new that's a little bit of a risk and still isn't fully established. And I completely get that. But on the other hand, I have been holding off on doing what I consider to be the more commercially sensible thing in order to play a long-term game and play with the industry and do things, try to, you know, be useful to other people and try and grow in that way. And the thing that I've been not doing is using Kickstarter. I think that there are an awful lot of advantages in going back to Kickstarter. I think I'm able to provide the customer with much more value. There's something about that whole aspect of, rather than releasing things incrementally bit by bit, you concentrate on a campaign, you work out what you can achieve, you get a lump sum which you can then invest in the product and make it as great as you can, and also the financial pressure of just running on a day-to-day basis is taken off you, and you can really concentrate on those jobs which I think everyone in their life, whether you're self-employed or not, knows. There's a difference between the jobs which are important and urgent, the jobs which are urgent and not important, and then the jobs which are important but not urgent. Hang on, did I already say that one? Urgent, but yeah, you get entirely what I'm saying. It's really easy. All of the stuff that's important but isn't urgent is the stuff that gets put off till tomorrow, and you end up doing all of the urgent stuff, and the important but not urgent things just get kicked into the long grass. And one of those is absolutely development of the world, development of the fluff. That's something which I've been working on slowly in the background, but not doing anything to a level of quality where I want to publish it. So I've got lots of ideas there, and the world has been developed, but I haven't been able to polish it into a form where I feel like I can present it to you guys and feel and be proud of it. So Kickstarter definitely enables that. It definitely enables being able to do things like creating a whole bunch of new scenarios, in having Kickstarter releases which are themed for a different part of the world, where we release a bunch of models which expand all of the factions in different directions. We'll be able to play test more intensively. And so I think the answer to the question is that I am not happy with the speed of the release schedule up until now. But I think having less frequent but much bigger releases and doing that via Kickstarter is probably the better way forward for the Drowned Earth.
Cool. We'll keep an eye out for those. And I don't know, sometimes if I miss the Kickstarter, I know it'll be released, and so I can save my pennies for the stuff when it
to be absolutely clear, while I'm talking about the sort of traditional shying away a bit from the traditional distribution method, I absolutely do not mean that I'm unwilling to sell to shops and that there won't be sales in between the Kickstarters. I'm open for business. Anybody who distributor, shop, who wants to buy product, they absolutely can. Obviously, the Kickstarter releases are not available until they've until the backers have been fulfilled. But with that restriction, everything is absolutely open for business. My point really is just that shops and distributors don't like Kickstarter because they get cut out. You go straight from the producer to the customer, and that's problematic, of course, for anyone who has fixed costs and rent and what have you to pay, and it makes people much less likely to want to get behind a company that is constantly using Kickstarter. And so that was my initial reason for saying I've done that, and now we're going to try and crack the traditional method. The traditional method hasn't worked, so I'm happy to put my hands up and say it's my fault. I'm not good at marketing. I'm good at being enthusiastic, but not good at, I don't know, whatever. But at the end of the day, and I've thought very long and hard about it, I feel very confident that by going back to Kickstarter, I can offer everyone who loves the Drowned Earth much more and probably better prices, better value in general, and just grow the game, grow the world in a much better way than I have been able to so far.
Cool. I know you had just mentioned something about all of the story and the lore working in your brain. And there was a question posted about RPG. Any thoughts on an RPG in the world of Ulaya?
So it's really funny that question's asked because, and that question's been asked now, because literally not last week completely ran away with me, but the week before I made a very conscious decision and actually sat down and did 2 or 3 hours work. I pulled out all my old notes and started working on the RPG idea, which I've had for quite some time. And the reason for doing it, so I need to manage expectation here. The reason for doing it is that I think an RPG is a very, very big and long-term project. And for people who aren't in the know industry-wise, RPGs aren't actually a great way to make money. And unfortunately, I have, this is my job, just like everyone else. I need to go to work and get paid. And so as much as I'd like to just, throw caution to the wind and go where my heart tells me, I have, financial responsibilities, family-wise and what have you. So I still need to make this work financially. Otherwise, I can't do it at all. And it occurred to me, and I was thinking about it not that long ago, that I definitely want to do an RPG, but it's going to be a slow burn, long-term project. So that's the managing expectations. If it happens, it's going to be probably a couple of years in the future. But if it's going to be a couple of years in the future and it's a slow burn, slow investment of time project, then I really need to start now, right? And I haven't really thought about the RPG for a good 6 months, and I just pulled out the stuff the week before last, and somebody asks that question. So I think the answer is, if anybody wants to get involved in playtesting it, I think, I don't want to say when exactly, but I reckon probably late spring or early summer next year, I might have knocked it into a shape where it's actually playable by other people and we can start working on it in a very long term. It's a year's worth of playtesting before we actually start to think seriously about releasing it.
Cool. So if there's any of you out there that was really interested in the world and thought an RPG would be great, reach out to James and say, hey, I'd love to help craft it. And it's a great way to keep involved with it and share it too with people. I know that's how for me, just sharing it by being involved with it, because it's such a cool world and game. And so I'm going to be selfish and throw in one other question.
Okay.
Looping back to Flanders season and talking about all the cool stuff that might be coming out next year, we saw a couple of great teases for Wave 3 here this year during Planters season.
Oh, yeah.
And any idea on when we can get our hands on, say, that beautiful Triceratops man?
So I am hoping that, so I think this video is going to go out on the Saturday.
Okay.
And I think also on the Saturday, the pre-order for those models is going to go up. I'm hoping that the delivery date will be the 8th of November. However, I think for anyone who is going to Essen Spiel in Germany, which is a show which it's kind of like the European Gen Con. I think it's the biggest in the world. I think it's bigger
Oh,
than
it's
Gen Con.
massive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 8 halls or 9, I think. But for anybody who's been to Salute is one hall. Anybody who's been to any of those big sort
Mhm.
of warehouse aircraft hangar style exhibition centers, 8 halls is just crazy, an absolutely insane amount. It's a
Yeah,
it's a
granddaddy.
4-day show, and you really need to take all 4 days to see it. I obviously never see it because I'm going there to
Right.
talk to people about Drowned Earth, but we're going this year. I think we're going to have a limited supply of those models. Just anyone who pre-orders and will be attending the show, I think we'll be able to pick them up a little bit earlier. Basically, the reason why I can't send them out in time for Essen is simply that I'm going to be in Germany, so I physically won't be able to do it. But yeah, come along for that. And also at Essen, another thing that's worth noting is I've got a very, very early prototype of the AI system for the AI campaign,
Oh, cool.
which we're kickstarting in the first quarter of next year. If you want to, it's very rudimentary, but if you want to come and have a look at what it might be like, what direction we're heading in at the moment, then you would be most welcome to do that. And I might even take the odd sneaky video just to give people a taster who can't attend the show.
Oh, very cool. So there we go. So Wave 3 is closer than we think. And check them out at Essen. Check out the AI system at Essen. That's going to be cool. Yeah, that I hear that convention is just massive and amazing. And yeah,
Yeah, they have it's as I say, it's 8 halls. One entire hall is just wargaming. So basically, they've got Salute is their just like one tiny eighth of their overall exhibit, and then the rest of it is all kinds of different games, from like seriously nerdy speculative fiction, fantasy, and sci-fi games to
Mhm.
family games to party games. You name it, it's there. I think Asmodee take an entire hall just them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy, but great fun and great atmosphere.
Nice. I think that's about all of the questions that we collected
Cool,
earlier.
cool.
Ron.
Okay, so I've just got one very quick thing to say. Just anyone in the US who's watching at the moment, as you know, we do our free postage to the US for any orders over £100. But also, we've just started supplying Discover Games, who are based in Lafayette, in Louisiana, I think.
Oh,
It's a shop you probably won't have heard of unless you're from that part of the state, but they've just opened a web store. So it's well worth checking that out. I'll leave a link in the description below. And equally, we are talking to Noble Knight. Hopefully they will pick the game up as well. And so that, again, it's a brick and mortar store, but it also has a big web presence and does a lot of pan-continental US sales, I think.
yeah. They've got a really great. They do also a lot of old games, things that you hadn't seen before, hard to find. So they'd be a great person to be able to distribute the game both locally in the Madison, Chicago area, and then spread it out to the rest of the country. So
Yeah,
there we go,
well,
US guys. That's
so I
cool.
guess you're in the far north, and Discover is in the fairly far south.
Yeah,
So you got the bases covered.
two different areas. That's cool. Great. Yeah, was that about all the little tidbits and things we wanted to throw out at this time?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've just about covered it. I don't know how long we've been, but probably longer than I intended. But nature of the beast. Hopefully, it's been interesting for people. And I think we will start to work on getting our monthly live chat out again sometime soon
Hmm.
as well. And thanks, Sean, for coming along and hosting all of those questions. And thanks to everyone for watching.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Have fun out there. Finish your hazardous planting, and we'll see what happens coming into the winter time.
Indeed, indeed. Oh, and join the Wayfarers program. Speak to Sean.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody who's interested in helping to promote the game, I often get asked, are you distributing in my country and what have you? And the number one way to, obviously we post worldwide, but the number one way to make that happen is to create a community in your local area so that your local shop has an interest in stocking and promoting the game. So that's absolutely the number one way to make that happen. So yeah, join the Wayfarers program, and we are also always looking for enthusiastic beta testers with a little bit of a little bit of game experience under their belt, somebody who's played before semi regularly and has got some ideas about the game. We're always looking for people like that who are willing to pitch in, look at what we've got coming, and offer an opinion.
Yeah. It'd be great to have you. Always more people to play the game is always a plus.
Indeed. Well, thanks, Sean. Thanks, everyone. And we'll sign off.
All right. See everyone around. Bye.